Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone, and good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the 24th talk in our mental health awareness series. As the title suggests, we will be discussing about nine, I would say, thinking traps. Now, thinking, uh, although thinking is a good thing, yeah, always naturally thinking a lot of things, but there could be thinking traps where we get stuck, especially in our thinking. So we're going to actually look at what they are and then how we can actually overcome those traps, thinking traps, and then develop healthy, I would say, strategies to think better. Now, in Buddhism, thinking is a uh, is an integral part of our five aggregates. As you can remember, this component uh, includes the nama part. Now, in the main classification of nama rupa, we understand rupa is the material part, and nama means the uh, Sanya, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana part. I mean, there are four uh, elements of Nama. So, which means Vedana, feelings, and then Sanya means, I would say, perceptions. Sankhara means formations, and Vijnana means consciousness. Now, people might get stuck in a different way of, looking at these four. According to Abhidhamma, these four are not independent. They are dependent on each other. Let's say there is feeling. The moment the feeling arises, then the rest of the three elements, I would say aggregates, also arise. When the perception arises, all three other elements get to arise too. When sankhara arises, formations rise, then all the three other aggregates also get to start. When the vijnana arises, all the rest of the three aggregates get to arise. I mean, the ones we talk about under the nama. That means thinking, which is a combination of all these. Now, we don't see thinking with regard to Vedana, but Vijnana, Sanya, uh, Sankhara, I mean, all these contribute to our thinking. Now, in some of the Pali Suttas, we understand that there is a process of, mental, I would say, cognitive, you know, activism, I would say, kind of functioning. We call it chitta viti. Now, although we may come up with kusala, akusala, I would say, moral, immoral thoughts, they don't happen randomly. Each thought has to pass through a kind of a process. We call it a chitta viti. Now, although you can see that, okay, I'm very lustful now, I'm very angry now, I'm very ignorant now. Although you may make such internalizations, but those internalizations would not have occurred actually if you had not passed through a certain kind of a chitta viti. That is very interesting. Now, looking at our topic for today's discussion, thinking traps. So, if thinking happens naturally, or if thinking can also be happen through efforts, then we should understand how does natural thinking start and happen. So, without, I would say, whenever you see an object, whenever you hear something, whenever you taste something, whenever you smell something, whenever you think something, whatever the objects that you, I would say, process through your consciousness types, all these consciousnesses lead up to, I would say, uh, manodwara at a certain point. We call it, there is a certain name in Abhidhamma, we call it manodwara viti chitta. That means, let's say you take the objects through panchadwara, and then those objects have to be passed through by, I would say, have to pass through a manodwara, I would say, mind or process. Now you may wonder what can happen to me when I sleep. I'm not taking any objects, right? So consciousness still has to play a role, otherwise you are dead, right? If you don't think. What happens when you sleep? Do I think? There is a process that happens with the consciousness. You may not think the way you think, but there is thinking happening within you. We call it a manodwara chittaviti. So there is no panchadwara, five door sense process, or cognitive process. But when you sleep, during the time of your sleep, then you have a mind or cognitive process. It happens. So then now you understand uh, thinking is not something that you always come up with an object. Thinking happens continuously without an interval. This is why in the most important analysis, I would say, it's called a synthesis of Abhidhamma, Patthana Prakarana. It talks about a certain kind of a conditionality called Anantara Pache. That means after each thought, they are supposed to have another thought. That means thoughts do not have an interval. They keep arising. We call anantara. No antara. There's no interval. Although in some other Buddhist traditions, they talk about there's an interval between when you die, the moment when you die, and the moment when you are reborn. There's no interval in Theravada Buddhism. The moment you die is the moment you are reborn. We call it a Chuti Chitta and a Padisandhi Chitta. There's no interval. That's why in Pattanapakarana we say this conditionality called Anantara Pache. There's no interval. No interval. So thoughts arise without an interval. So now you understand that consciousness, I would say, we have a mind. That mind is attached to our, birth, and then within that mind we create consciousness, I mean sensory consciousness types like chakku vinyana, sotagana, jiva, kaya, mana. But I mean beyond that there is this base consciousness, what we call by bhavanga vinyana, or I would say bhavanga means the consciousness that traverses when you die, that goes away when you die. So all these consciousnesses, sensory consciousnesses, cognitive process types, they all arise within uh, the bhavanga, I would say, the consciousness that traverses uh, even when you die, especially in the samsara. Now, when you say, I want to attain nibbana, what does that mean? That means you want to cut the process of the bhavanga vinyana. Okay. I mean, when you say you want to attain nibbana, means you want to stop that consciousness. Because of that bhavanga vinyana, we are supposed to be reborn. Now, all these topics, I mean, lead up to the thinking. So, thinking is a big problem. Some of the jhanic people, when they practice rupavachara jhanas, one group called, I would say, kind of material jhanic community called, I would say, those people, they practice jhanic practices thinking that the reason for my suffering, or the reason for the cause of the suffering, is thinking, or I would say perception. So when they die, they're going to be reborn in a specific Brahma world called Asanya Sapta. That is one of the 16 Brahma worlds. So when someone is reborn in this particular Asanya Sapta, they don't have the Nama component. So they don't have, I would say, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. They only live with the material part. But sadly, what happens after kind of an unaccountable time of they are living there, they get to think something. The moment they think, they're gonna be reborn somewhere else. So thinking is such important. I mean, so the problem is, although we get to think for different reasons. I mean, although we are taking objects through senses, or whether we are processing those objects through mind or process, I would say manodwara viti, there's something to learn. Now, if you look at mano sankhara means sanya and vedana. They are the mano sankharas. Now, in many suttas, the Buddha always advises us that we need to still the mano sankharas, chitta sankharas. So, in order for us to uh, have a healthy way of thinking, we need to still our chitta sankharas. Now, that is the bottom line, or I would say the crux of, I would say, the main platform of our understanding where we should actually navigate today. But I'm going to actually look at uh, some of the ways of like ill thinking. I would say thinking traps. I mean, these are, I mean, probably described in the contemporary world, modern world, to be, I mean, unhealthy ways of thinking. So I would call them mental traps or thinking traps. So if you are somebody who have these thinking more or less, today is the time to check them out and then to, I would say, uh, think about some of the ways of overcoming them. So let's take a look at of what they are. Number one, I I mean, this could be a habit too. I mean, thinking trap. I would say whenever you keep doing that for a long time, it will become a habit because habits are what we are doing, right? Now, when you say somebody is bad, somebody is good, what is it? What does it mean? It means that somebody is continuously doing something for a long time, right? Let's say somebody is hurting someone's feelings. She is doing that for a long time. That means that particular bad thing has been a habit to that particular person. So, whenever you say you want to help someone, I would say find out their own path. That means you're going to change their habits because they have formed habits over time, right? So, in that context, what I wanted to pay attention is that we need to look at these habits. So, they are traps because they have been traps because we've been actually keeping them as habits. Number one, the I can't habit. Now, this is kind of a oft quoted way of, I would say, kind of a frequent way of looking at things with a kind of a weak perspective. Like a lot of people, they think that we can do certain things. Some people also think that we can do many things. There are things we can do. I mean, we have to first look at what we want to do, right? Let's say we are figuring out, exploring Dhamma through suttas, Abhidhamma, and in modern applied Buddhism, engaged Buddhism, right? So, I mean, it is not, I mean, bad. I mean, we have to figure out what we want to do. When we figure out what we want to do, then you also try to then put them into action. Whenever you want to put them into action, then you will see whether these are, I would say, I mean, readily available for me to do or not. I mean, these are, uh, I mean, these can be easily done or not. Then you are trying to find out different ways to practice them. But the problem is there are people who naturally come up with thoughts that I can do this, we can do this, right? So it's not a good way of thinking. I mean, if you understand, this is something that we all can, uh, work on, right? So a good person, I would say a healthy person always thinks that, I mean, there are ways to practice, there are ways to do anything. The problem is we probably wanted to uh, do something in a certain way, but that certain way might not work. We had to find out different ways, right? Now, there are monks who are teaching Dhamma all over the world. There are politicians all over the world. There are, I would say, techie people all over the world. There are a lot of people in the same industry, but they want to be creative. So when you are creative, you are finding different ways to, fulfill your hopes and plans, right? That's a very neat. Because if you don't look at different ways to make them happen, then you are already stuck in your thinking. Or maybe you might think that somebody who is very exceptional, who is very skilled, has done this particular work in a different way, and I can't do that. You may do it probably in a different way. So the I can habit, or I would say it's kind of a mental trap, thinking trap. So you need to work on it. If you think that, you can do that, right? The second thinking trap is the catastrophizing habit. I mean, this means that you always pick on the negative side of, some actions, outcomes, right? I mean, we always need to do kind of a proper research, our own research about, things that we want to do, we want to get done. I mean, if you do that research with so much practical and good ways, then we can actually make a good plan. But there are people who always pick on the negative side. Uh, in the first place, can't do this, we can't do that. I mean, this happens to some Buddhists too, right? I mean, when they want to practice Dhamma, I mean, Abhidhamma, that's a kind of a deep teaching, deep kind of teaching. Uh, Probably I don't want to actually read through a lot of suttas. Probably I don't want to actually listen to a Dhamma talk. It's too long, 1 hour kind of thing, right? Probably there are people who always make comments about meditation. I mean, meditation is something that I don't want to actually do it because it's too long for me. I can't do it by sitting, right? So these are reflections of kind of a mental trap, which we understand by the catastrophizing habit, because you always pick on the negativities of a particular activity. Actually, every activity has a negative side, right? Because there is a negative side of each activity, not because it's negative, but because people always wanted to do it in a certain way. But that certain way can be different if you really want to be uh, creative about it, right? Now, this is why I sometimes encourage people, if you are not comfortable with a long meditation, then do a sacred pose. Sacred pose means a mini meditation. I mean, you don't need to sit for 1 hour. You can sit for 5 minutes, right? But whenever you keep doing that 5 minutes meditation, probably morning and evening, then after some time you get to a point that you can do it. You never thought you could stay still. You never thought you could actually continue a meditation, but you started from a tiny point, right? But if you always try to hit on that, the larger, bigger, uh, you know, uh, goals in the first place, you might not make them happen. So do not try to pick on the negative side of anything in the first place. Try to be creative to find out the positive sides in different creative ways. Now, the first one is the thinking that I can't do anything. The second thing is that pick on the negative side. We call it the catastrophizing habit. The third thinking trap is the all or nothing habit. Now, for example, I would say, uh, you know, you can see life almost in extreme ways. Now, this is what happened even to the Prince Siddhartha, ascetic Siddhartha, right? Now, uh, there are people who, you know, strive to make something happen. Now, even ascetic Siddhartha, I mean, he started with Atha Kilamatam Yoga, I mean, self modification. And he did it for 7 years, 6 years. And he himself understood this is not the way to liberation. There's something going on that I should not continue. So that means failures are natural. If failure was something that ascetic Siddhartha also had to do, had to face, then what about us? So it's okay, right? I heard the famous, I would say, writer, I can't remember her name. One of her quotes was that we sometimes need to fail to succeed. There are a lot of people who had to fail for different reasons. They didn't want to fail, but they fail because that failure was what helped them to succeed. Do we ever think that way? We always think we always want to succeed, we always want to pass, we always want to get through. But sometimes this is not something going to work for everybody, right? So a lot of ups and downs can come on our ways. But those ups and downs always actually create a different avenue for all of us to work on. So the all or nothing thinking trap or habit means that just because you met with a total failure, do not think that you need to, I would say, uh, get out of your path in following whatever thing that you're supposed to do. You always need to understand that you have to go in moderation. Probably you haven't worked on the particular activity in balance, Majjhima Patipada, Noble Eightfold Path. So our thinking has to be balanced. There are people who want to study more, that's okay. But if you are only studious, you only study, you are actually completely ignoring your work life, probably your personal life, then you are missing out on something. Also, the opposite side. Let's say you are somebody who is only working, you are not thinking about your personal life. You have to have everything in balance. That balance also depends on everybody's activities. Now, my balance is not your balance. You have to find out what could be my balance like, right? So just because you met with a kind of a total failure, that doesn't mean that you have to stop. Maybe you have followed, you have overdone one extreme, right? So when you are thinking, you always have to think in balance. This is what we call by the all or nothing habit. Because if you think uh, in moderation about anything, even when you are making your own judgment, if you are balanced, then most probably you are making a good conclusion, at least something rational and then more beneficial to everyone, including you. So the fourth mental trap, or I would say the habit, is the zooming in on the negative habit. So, we always have a probability, I would say, we always, have a chance, opportunity of actually uh, meeting things not in the way that we want them to happen. So failures are very common. They are not by exception. Even the ascetic Siddhartha had this for 6 years. I mean, if somebody question about it, I mean, why did he spend so long? I mean, why he didn't understand? I mean, if he was such wise enough, why why did he, not drop that idea of actually continuing for 6 years? Because those 6 years um, could have actually minimized to 1 year or 3 months, and then he could have done a lot of other things at that time. Probably he might have attained Buddhahood, I mean, probably way earlier, and then he could have spent probably 46, 47, 48, 50 years of that time, right? So he only spent like 45 years of being the Buddha, attained Buddha when he was 35. So, I mean, that means failures are common. But the problem is whenever you met with a failure, if you only zoom in on that negative habit without understanding, I would say, positivity, how to bring positivity through the failure, that would be a problem. Now, the previous one is actually being in moderation about your thinking. In your thinking, the fourth one is about uh, only focusing on the negative side of what happened with your thinking. Because We always supposed to make good choices, but who is making good choices all the time, right? So we always have a chance of making good and bad choices, right? So the most important thing is that whether we are looking at the positive side of our actions, probably even the failures. Because if we are only zooming in on the negative habit, if we are not talking about, thinking about, I would say, positive sides of what we are supposed to do, then we are missing out on many things. Now, this is what happens to many when they are going to find a solution to a problem. In most of the decision making atmospheres, what we see is that they spend more time on the problem and very less time on the solution, right? Let's say there is an environmental problem, and they are most of the problem. I would say most of the cohorts that we see in many places, they actually mostly putting blame on somebody. But instead of blaming on someone, we might have to look at who are the perpetrators behind that. But more than talking about the problem, why don't we talk about the solutions? If we only talk about solutions, solutions come from problems actually, because you are more focused on solutions, not just merely, I would say, revolving around the problems. Then you are finding good solutions. Now the thing is, when it comes to the fourth mental trap, these people only zoom in on the negative habits of their thinking, probably the activities that they may have done. So they are not looking at how we can actually move on, probably bounce back or be resilient, right? That's not a good thing. It's a mental trap. And the fifth mental trap is the I should, you should habit. So there are people who might, I mean, these people exist everywhere in any sort of context. They might always think that they have their set of rigid and unreasonable, uh, I would say, conditions, you know, others to follow because they think that way. If they are not met, if the others are not doing the same way that they expect them to be, and then they get upset. So this is kind of a mental trap because we have no authority over other people, but we can kindly, sort of let them know. I mean, this is what I think, but if you wanted to do that, it's fine. But it's always over to you, up to you. We should have that conversation. We should have that, I would say, that engagement rather saying that this is what I like. I don't want to hear what you want to say. That's kind of a, you know, kind of a stop to pleasant conversations, connections, pleasant connections. So if somebody continues with a mentality, like a thinking habit by the I should, you should have it, it's a mental trap because you are trapped. You are trapped by that thinking. You need to get out of that trap in a way that you need to engage others in positive ways, right? Never ever think that others should do the way you need. I mean, of course, if you are running a company, it's a different case. But in society, in your personal circles, what you wanted to think is that you need to understand how to get others involved, engage with something that you expect in a nice, comfortable way. Not that this is my, I would say, perspective, and others should also do the same perspective. Others also work on that perspective. That might not work. The sixth mental trap or thinking trap is the fortune telling habit. Now, there are people who always conscious, I mean, cognizing about future. I mean, they are doing a job like those people who won't actually predict about the foreseeable future and the future, pretty much. And then when things not going the way that you expect them to be, I would say, for the future, and then you get very tense. upset, frustrated. So to you don't need to be disappointed just because your way of thinking about the future with others and about you gets stuck, because future is not under our control. Past is gone and we have no control over it. Future is yet to come. We have no control over it. But we can change the future. We can change the past the way we think just because of this moment. So if you always have a mentality that always focuses on the future, that means you have this the fortune telling habit. I would say it's kind of a mental trap, thinking trap, because we have to look at the future with some pleasant, I would say, healthy ways, rather than trying to get stuck in the future, right? Because it hasn't yet come to a certain extent that we can have some idea. So do not just depend on this fortune telling kind of a thinking. I mean, somebody can actually relate this to fortune tellers too, right? I mean, you ask from somebody, hey, what's going to happen to me in the future? What's going to happen to me in 10 years? What are the sicknesses I'm going to have? How many partners I'm going to have? Who is who is the person that I'm going to be with? I mean, there are people who are always concerned about these things. And then what happens the moment you get to know that some of the sayings, some of the futuristic ideas from other people, those people, XYZ, then you probably ruin your present moment, because this is the moment that you can change your future. In Buddhism, most of the karmic things in our future can be changed, can be neutralized. If you only take somebody's, XYZ people's ideas that this is going to be my future, I can't change it, that means you are going against the fundamental Buddhist thoughts, right? Because we can change our future, we can change our karmas too. This is not something that I'm telling you that you can do a bad karma and you can change them. That's not the way that I'm picking this on. I'm trying to say that there are many teachings across the teachings that we can change vipakas by doing more good karmas, by changing our mentality about it. But if you are stuck in a kind of a fortune telling mentality, it is a trap. It is a thinking trap. You get stuck to it, and you won't be able to be free. You not be able to be independent. You have to be independent. You have to be free with your thinking. So that free thinking will be, I would say, marred and then disturbed by the fortune telling habit, thinking trap. That's not a good thing. We certainly wanted to have a good future by doing well at this moment with some plans, but we are not living in the future. We are not living in the past. I think I got a question over here. Rachel Wong. Dear Bhante, please advise how do we skillfully persuade others, especially with high egos or just being stubborn in workplace or home to change their I can habit. Now, this is going to be the first thinking trap or habit. I can habit to become happier and friendly people. Okay, here's my take. Now, we live with different people. We have to understand that we are living with so many different people. They are different in body, they are different in shape, they are different in their likes and dislikes. Most of all, they are different in their temperaments, their characteristics. Even the siblings, even the families that you can see, every family, you can see how different are they in their thinking. So, if we understand that the change is something that is really uh, the fundamental habit, the fundamental element of our life, this is what we call, anicca, because people are not permanent, uh, in different ways. Then we have to find out appropriate, suitable, I would say, custom tailored ways to work with them. Let's say, as you mentioned, Rachel, you mentioned that there are people who have high egos. I think not just other people. There are many people. We also have ego, but the problem is that we have sort of deeper down that. We have sort of decreased by learning a lot of Dhamma. The more you learn Dhamma, you understand. Oh, I have ditti, I have views, I have mana, see, uh, measurements, right? The more you understand Dhamma, then of course you understand that I'm more with ego, so I have to sort of decrease my ego, right? So it's kind of a change in our perspective, right? So those people may not have learned those things. So I mean, it is of course not a good idea just to say that you have a kind of a high ego, but probably we can sort of be smart to work with them. Probably you can show that you are more listening to them. Probably they will be open to you. This opening up is also a very good thing, right? So those people who have a high ego, they are not really open to us because they think that if they are open to us, they will be inferior to us. They always want to be superior because they have an insecurity about their life, about their probably positions in their workplace, positions in their level status of their family life, right? So rather than saying you have a high ego, why don't we try to be smart with them? I mean, why don't we try to accept them, validate them in a better way so that they will be opening up and they will see what's going on with us, right? That's a bit smart way of uh, dealing with such people for us, and actually we are helping them too. Now the I would say the thing that we always see in other people, like in most connections, people is that they wanted to say that you have an ego, you have sakkaya ditthi, and who doesn't have an ego? We all have egos, but the problem is the more we understand about our ego through Dhamma, real Dhamma, true Dhamma, then we have a chance of decreasing it. So we can invite them into Dhamma in a very smart way. Not saying that we are higher than them, rather than accepting, validating them in nice ways because if they are our families, if they are our friends, if they are our co-workers, so they are a part of our life in some sort of ways, right? We can't just ignore them. They may be stubborn. I mean, people who have high egos, they are stubborn because they think that they are not welcome, they are not accepted, they are not validated, right? Uh, I mean, I have so many examples. You see. I know that there was one lady that who was not given any compliment of that. She's being actually pretty to a certain point that she was complimented by somebody. You are pretty, and she was thinking to herself, "Oh, really? Nobody told me that I'm pretty." And today, of course, I got this compliment. So as long as she did not hear that compliment of being pretty. She was having this ego, I'm not accepted, and I have to show them, I'm pretty, and she's trying to convince other people. There's a huge insecurity. That insecurity is what you have to understand, Lord. People who have a high ego, they always carry a huge amount of insecurity. We have to understand that. We only see the ego part. We have to look at what is inside that ego, insecurity. So if we let them feel that there is no need to have this insecurity, we accept you, I welcome you, I understand your problems, I'm listening to you, and that person will change the idea. That person will change the perspective. So probably if there were people who thought to a certain extent that I can do that habit, as you say, they will change their mindset. There are a lot of people who were much worse than those folks that you all talk about here. They can change. They have a better chance of changing their perspectives. Okay, so the sixth one is the fortune telling habit, which means that somebody who is always stuck to a futuristic mentality. It's a thinking trap. The seventh one is the mind reading thinking trap or habit. So that means you try to conclude about you and the other people just by um, what you observe, which might not be practical, right? We are not people who are telepathic, right? I mean, telepathy is what you call by parachitta vijanananya. I mean, this is kind of a, uh, I would say, knowledge that you get when you attain, uh, I would say, attain this, I mean, the mental state called, um, abhinyas, right? So only the people who attain that state can understand that they have telepathy. Than that, we all are not capable of reading the minds of others. We can read others' mind in a certain way, but if you have a habit wherein which or by which you always try to read other people's mind, but it is not going to be workable. It is not going to work very well. Probably you are reading wrongly, incorrectly. Then on top of that, you are making decisions on your absurd and irrational uh, mind reading. I think there will be a lot of repercussions for you. We don't need to because we don't know how and what other people think, right? If you have a mindset that you think that you can read anybody's mind, yeah, there are certain levels of uh, reading others' mind, but not to the fullest, not to the level that we see the practical results of many spiritual things, especially. So don't do that. Try to observe people. Uh, try to be objective, because subjective thinking always goes by seeing things as we are. But if you think that you wanted to have seeing things as they are, that is objective, right? If you see this remote controller in a way that comparing with other remote controllers in the past, probably if that is subjective thinking. But if you always think that this remote controller may have something distinct, something interesting to other remote controls I know already, and you specifically look at it differently. But if you only label it as just another remote control that I already see, that thinking is subjective. There is where we're going to have this labeling subjective, which has this mind reading thing. Things could be different. That's not a good way of thinking, because we always need to let us be open to other people. They may be different, they may be distinct their own ways, so that we understand them better, so that we make better decisions about them, rather than just deciding on what they are uh, from outside. Just as we say, do not judge a book by the book cover, right? Because we have to read it, we have to know it by ourselves. Even the Buddha said, don't blame other people until you see it in your own eyes, right? He told the monks and nuns, if you say somebody is wrong, somebody has done something bad, never ever make that judgment unless you see it. That's why even there is something happened to somebody like a monastic or somebody else, then there should have an assembly of people to ask questions from that particular person, rather than just go by the rumors, right? It is always very important to observe things in our own ways. The number eight mental trap or thinking trap is the blaming habit. Now, it is very normal to see that a lot of people, they blame others for failures, right? They not only blame others, they also blame themselves. Okay, in in some countries, they actually hit themselves. They uh, torture themselves for whatever they may have done. In Buddhism, we are not supposed to do any of these things. In Buddhism, we know if we have done something wrong, if we have done something not as expected, we always have a second chance, because we understand we can make uh, things not in the way how, I mean, they are supposed to be done in the text. We always carry these human errors at all times. But we are not trying to make human errors, but we are trying to understand that there is a high chance of like not making the right decisions, right? So we always need to understand without blaming others. We all are humans, right? Things can go wrong, but they haven't done that uh, purposely. So we always have to have that room for everybody, not only for others, but also for you, right? If you have done something wrong, you have to learn from it, but do not try to torture yourself, right? Because Buddha always asks us to practice self care, right? So the mental trap, the thinking habit that you need to blame other people, that is a really bad thing. Bad, like I would say, it's a trap, mental trap. The ninth mental trap or thinking trap is it's not fair habit, right? Now, for example, we always look for fairness, justice, right? Now, in today's society, it has been developing, I would say, growing in a different way. I would say everybody is looking for justice. I mean, if there's justice, they post on Facebook, on other social media, and there was something happened to somebody and I don't like it, we have to stand up for that person. Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, so there's a social, I would say, validation uh, that can happen with some of those, straight, I would say, fearless appearances for the victims. That's a good one. But but there are times that where people think that they are always mistreated. I mean, this is something we have to understand. A lot of people, especially couples, sometimes some people, even the relationships here, you know, uh, between parents and children, employers, employees, sometimes devotees and monastics too, friends and companions. What else? There are a lot of teachers and students. I mean, there's this grumbling complaint that we can see that, I mean, each party of the relationships can think that I or we are not treated fairly for something. Probably at a time that it is not actually realistic. We overthink about somebody's something to us, right? Because that is why we need to empathize. We have to put us in other people's shoes, like empathy. If we put like I do that all the time. When I think that in my irrational thinking that somebody mistreated me. I mean, that is my irrational thinking because I always look for, I mean, you always look for justice, fairness. But if that comes to me, if I think that somebody did not talk to me well, if somebody don't treat me well, I'm always thinking, okay, what do I do if I was in that person's shoes at that time? Oh, I probably might do the same thing, right? I have to think that way, not just looking at only my side. Let's say somebody did not talk to you well, right? Probably it was a bad time to talk that much, but you were expecting that you could have treated better. You could have, I mean, given more opportunities from these people. But if you put yourself in that person's shoes, then you understand. Oh, I would do the same thing. That's not, I mean, going to be, I mean, different than what the other person did at that point to me. So that is what you call empathy. So it's not fair mental trap. I would say habit is something where you always look for fairness with irrational thoughts. I mean, we always want to be fair, uh, to everyone. But if we are overthinking about fairness, then that's gonna be kind of a mental trap that we are carrying. That's not a good thing. That's why I always think if you think that if you have this what you call epiphany or whatever, like I would say this random thought, okay, I was not treated well. What if I put myself in that person's shoes, the person that I think that could have done better to me? Then of course I understand. it's gonna be not any different than that person, because it is what that everybody does in the face of that kind of a situation. Okay, so these are the nine thinking traps. Let me read again. Number one, the I can't habit. The I can't habit means that there are people who always say, no, I can't. That's a mental trap, because you have to find out different ways of putting into action, putting whatever things that you are supposed to do into action. Number two is the catastrophizing habit. That means somebody is always stuck to the negativities of something even before they gonna start. That's kind of a bad, kind of a mental trap. Because why we want to always pick on the bad things? Let's be positive, right? Third one, the all or nothing habit, right? So things happen differently. We are not perfect. We are perfectly imperfect. Uh, Thinking thus, what we have to understand is that things might not work the way that we want. So they might happen in different ways. So let's embrace that, and then look at different positive ways to do things. So the all or nothing habit means that you are stuck to irrational thoughts about failures. The fourth thinking trap is the zooming in on the negative habit. You are too much focused on the negativities. It's kind of similar to the catastrophizing habit. The fifth one is the I should, you should habit, kind of a bossy, manipulative, controlling habit. I do it, you should do it. I mean, that's not going to be healthy in any relationship, right? Because everyone is different. Let's find out an open discussion with everybody. I mean, in our life, find out different healthy ways to practice anything. The fifth one, the fortune telling habit. Too much stuck on the future, the thinking is a trap. The seventh one is the mind reading habit. You are too much about reading others. And we have to read others at certain point. Let's say you are in an unsafe neighborhood. You are kind of riding a bus or kind of a train where you feel unsafe. You read the minds of people who are riding with you, right? You read the minds of others who you can observe. That's good. But if you, instead of those occasions, if you can actually try to read everybody's mind. Okay, this person has come here probably for this thing, probably for that thing. That's gonna be really, I would say, ridiculous. And then, I mean, you are actually making something really unnecessary, and it's kind of a thinking trap. The eighth thinking trap is the blaming habit, trying to find fault with others about something failure. We are, as Buddhists, we should never find fault of others. Everybody makes mistake. I mean, we can have a, uh, I would say, kind of a kind, engagement. I would say we can have a kind discussion with those people, rather than that trying to say you are the culprit, you did the wrong thing, you are doing this all the time. I mean, this way of approaching the problem failure will actually give us a lot of frustrations. Everybody's frustrated. There are other repercussions, outcomes that can happen. Rather than blaming others, let's accept our faults and then try to consciously, uh, you know, uh, uh, I would say fine tune our path, our decisions, and then let's go healthily. Uh, Not even you can blame others for such people can blame others. They also blame for themselves, torturing themselves. I'm the one who did it. There are people who always think that way. There are others who even can't take that thinking. They probably might commit suicide. They want to blame them. You don't need to. Nobody should take their life. Nobody should commit suicide. If you take their life, if you commit suicide, that means you are kind of somebody who can even understand this concept, who does not know the preciousness of your life. There are many ways to think, right? You think that this is the only way for me to think. I need to die. But there are so many ways to think. Believe in that. If you find out those so many ways to think, you will never die. Because, there are a lot of ways to bounce back. The ninth thinking trap is the it's not fair habit, always looking for fairness, irrational. You always want to be fair to everybody, but there are people who have this obsessive, compulsive, I would say, thinking that I was not treated well because they are not empathizing with other people. Okay, any questions? Before that, I want to say that today we've been looking at mental traps. So I would say thinking traps. There are 9 major thinking traps. So we should avoid all these and then to find the opposite of these. In Buddhism, the Buddha says, think healthily. How we can think healthily? We can think uh, holistically. I would say the better word is holistically by bringing our thinking, our words, and our actions to a point where we can practice wisdom. If we bring wisdom and kindness or compassion to our action, our thoughts, our words, then only we can have this holistic, wholesome thinking, right? So, any moment that you spend without being wise, uh, you are supposed to create lot of unwholesome repercussions for future, this life and for the future. And also, any moment that you spend without not without with these thinking traps, you are ruining your moment. You are ruining your mentality. You are ruining your thinking. We should not ruin our thinking because our thinking is there to practice and bring that thinking towards holistic, wholesome purposes. That's what I was actually trying to tell you, that try to get rid of all these 9 thinking traps. Trying to develop holistic, wholesome thinking patterns. They are the opposite of these 9. Okay, I think there are no questions to this point, and I'm going to actually transfer with karmas with two departed individuals and with the deities. May all the good karmas that we've been accumulating in today's talk be transferred to all the departed relatives who passed away in the name of all of you. If your mother, father, siblings, grandfathers, granddaughters, anybody of them already had passed away, here is the opportunity to transfer good karmas to them. May all those departed individuals who passed away in the name of all of you in this life, in past lives, uh, take or receive all these good karmas. If they are living in a bad realm, I would say the Petas, bad lives, realms, may they be able to transition towards a better place. If they are already in a better place, realm, may they be able to improve their standards, life standards. Finally, may they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idammi ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ ඉදම්මි ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ ඉදම්මි ඥාතිනං හෝතු සුඛිතා හොන්තු ඥාතයෝ. Also, we share good karmas with devas, nagas, and other powerful beings that we can see. May all the devas, nagas, and other powerful beings be able to share all these good karmas. May they be able to receive all these good karmas as well. May they be able to bless you for good health, quality of your life, and all the prosperity, safety, and all the good things that you expect. May all you be safe and protected by the deities, devas, nagas, and mahitikas, powerful beings. May the deities, nagas, devas, nagas, and mahitikas also attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Akasattha च बुम्मट्ठा देवानागा महित्निका पुण्यन्तं अनुमोदित्वा चिरं रक्षन्तु लोकशासनम्. Akasattha च बुम्मट्ठा देवानागा महित्निका पुण्यन्तं अनुमोदित्वा चिरं रक्षन्तु देशनम्. Akasattha च बुम्मट्ठा देवानागा महित्निका Punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mang paranti. Ittavata cha ammihi sambhatam punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabbasang patti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammihi sambhatam punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbasang patti siddhya. Ittavata cha ammihi sambhatam punya sampadang sabbe satta anumodantu sabbasang patti siddhya. Finally, let's make our great wish. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be helpful for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very life. May all the good karmas we've been having in different formats today, aspects, listening to Dhamma, discussing the Dhamma, looking at the Dhamma with some contemporary perspectives, be all helpful for all of us to attain this precious supreme goal of attaining the Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm going to be blessing you with a couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana silis nichan vadha pachayino chattaru dhamma vadhanti ayuvanu sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sangha sampatti mevache atu nibbana sampatti iminati samichatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm wishing you a good morning. I would say a great day ahead of your time, and look forward to seeing you next week. And those folks who join from here in Canada, America, Europe, you have a good night. Take care.